Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Sthanavacheda drushti syat Indriyanam tadatmatam Gatadhistam hi pashyanyah Dehamatra iveksyate Kshanikam mitadatyartham Dharmamatram nirantaram. Sadrusya dipavattadhihi Tacchantih purusharthatah. In the verse 22 was the refutation of the opinion of the Jaina Mata, which says Madhya Parimana Atma. Atma is of the measure of the body. And the author here says how that perception arises. What causes them to conclude that Atma is of the size of the body, fills up the body? That is because basically the self or Atma illumines the Buddhi. Buddhi is identified with the sense organs. Sense organs are confined to the body. And therefore ultimately Buddhi becomes identified with the body, the shape of the body, and therefore the self thinks that I am or Atma is of the form or shape of the body. Meaning that this conclusion does not arise from the true knowledge of Atma, arises from this Brahma, that Atma is of the size of the body, is a Brahma or due to the Aviveka, not being able to distinguish between what has the form and what is formless. So consciousness illumines all the forms. Has to be formless, but that is thought to be having a form. And so that is not tenable, that is what is said. And also, that all the samsara is superimposed upon the Atma, is the kalpana, they say, how can there be kalpana? When there is no kalpaka, the kalpana, the projection can be there, provided there is one to project. Who is the one to project? And therefore there can be projection. But niravayavasya paramarthataha upadi samsarga ayogat. You to say that from the standpoint of the self, who is consciousness, niravayava, partless, and therefore formless, it cannot have a real sanyoga or a contact or association with anything, including with the body or the upadhi. And still there is this notion that the consciousness or Atma is of the form upadhi, that cannot be unless there is a kalpana, superimposition. So we see the superimposition, whether there is a superimposer or not. Kalpaka does not determine whether kalpana is there or not. We find kalpana to be there and therefore there is kalpana. If there is no kalpaka, it doesn't matter, kalpana is what we see. Tasmin surasya kalpitam chaiti bhavaha. And therefore, all these dharmas are superimposed on the Atma. Digambara mata nirakaranena yat anantatvam atmana uktam. The Atma is not madhyama parimana. It doesn't have a form. It is formless and therefore boundless. So this is the conclusion that the Vedanta stated. Amrushямanaha. The Atma is ananta, boundless. Not being tolerated this conclusion, Shakya pratyavadishtante, the followers of Shakya or Shakya Muni or Buddhas, they argue. Kshanikam itadatyartham dharmatram nirantaram. Tad jnanam ge ubhayam kshanikam, atyartham kshanikam. The jnayam, the object of knowledge, jnanam by which it is known, both of them are atyartham kshanikam, meaning extremely momentary. Idea is that a moment has no dimension. And therefore, moment, one should not imagine that moment is some fraction of time or something. It is dimensionless. Therefore, extremely swarasabhanguram, meaning that it is nature, is svabhavataha. It is perishable by nature. Every moment is perishing. Dharamatram nirantaram. Therefore, dharamatram, vastumatram, nasthaya kinchit, tasya adhishthanam asti. All that is what is perceived, but there is no adhishthanam of the jnayam or the jnata. There is no abiding reality. Imagine moments, then there is nothing to connect the moments. Every moment is independent of the previous one. Every moment a new Atma as well arises, there is no continuity. We may not mind accepting momentariness in matter, etc., except that momentariness cannot by itself sustain itself. There must be some abiding thing that connects the moments, which they don't accept. Tari katham vichhedo na upalabhyate. If every moment is different from the previous moment, that there is a constant break, then how come we with that vichheda, the break, the discontinuity, how come we don't perceive? It says nirantaram, nirantarena utpadyamanam ityartha. Every kshana, every moment is constantly being created. The previous moment dies or perishes, a new moment gets. This constant process going on. Now what creates? This is the nature. Why does this happen? Just happens. So, nairant utpadyamanam. It is sarvam kshanikam. All right, if you say that everything is momentary, there is no continuity between the previous moment and the following moment. Katham tari tadeva damiri Swami drashya drashtu visham pratyabhijnanam. How come in the day-to-day life we recognize that Tade Vedam, this is the same person, same book, same object. Tadevam, I'm the same one who met you yesterday, who saw you yesterday, who talked to you yesterday. This is Pratyabhijnanam. How come this Pratyabhijnanam or recognition is there with reference to object as well as subject if there is no continuity according to you? And say sadrushyat, ati sadrushyat. Because between the previous moment and next moment, there is extreme similarity and therefore you cannot see the distinction between them. What prevents you from recognizing the distinction between the previous moment and new moment is that new moment is so extremely similar to the previous one that we cannot distinguish that break, and therefore there is a delusion that there is a continuity of delusion. What is every moment the new entity arises. So Deepavat example is given, like the flame of a lamp which arises every moment as the fuel gets burnt. Otherwise, if that existed on its own, it would not require anything, but then ultimately the flame dies down. Which means that the flame is constantly changing, although we don't see the change because the new flame is so extremely similar to the previous one that we cannot distinguish between them. And therefore, that in life there is continuity. There is something steady, abiding, nitya, eternal. This is a delusion. Kshanikatvam, momentariness is a reality and steadiness is a delusion. Tat shantihi purusasada. Navasthayitva pratibhasasya. That superficially there is sthayitva, there is continuity of the object as well as subject, which in reality is not there. What's the reason? Tan moolasya avivekasya. Because aviveka meaning not being able to distinguish between the moments and steadiness, and moments are taken to be steady. That aviveka is there. Shanti astamaya, that is what has to subside. And therefore the notion that there is continuity, there is steadiness, there is eternity, that has to go. Because then there is, if every moment is independent, there is no samsara, understand? Samsara can be there only if there is continuity. Then the present is formed by the past. And therefore the present affected by the past and present will affect the future, etc. That's when the samsara can be there. Nothing, no continuity. Take every fresh moment as a fresh moment. If you can take every moment as a fresh moment, there is no connection to the previous moment, no connection to the following moment, then there is nothing to, no concern at all, no worries, no anxiety, no sadness. So pratibhasa nivritti eva. So nivritti, cessation of this notion that there is continuity itself is purusharthada. Now continuing in the verse 24, Siddhanti dushana vibhaga jnanaya bauddhamadam muddhamata bhedam vivicya darshayati. So this basically all Bauddha matas are kshanika vijnani, they are all momentary consciousness. Even in that kshanika vijnana also there are some technical differences. So there are supposed to be 4 schools of thought. Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Vijnanavadi, or Yogachara and Madhyamika. So first is, simplest is this Vaibhashika. Bhashya Pratyakshavadi. He says that there is pratyaksha or perception of objects because the objects are there, therefore there is perception. Although objects are also kshanika. The vijnanam also is kshanikam. Everything is kshanikam. And still they say that there is perception because we experience the objects and therefore they accept pratyaksha. Then there is this Sautrandika. Says, no, that there are external objects, all right, but there is no perception, no pratyaksha. It is only vijnanam that keeps on assuming the forms. First is vijnanam comes in contact with the object, that's why vijnanam assumes the form, and that's how pratyaksha or perception is there. Second is no. Vijnanam appears itself as the objects, so we infer the presence of the objects. So, nitya anumeyatvam. Nitya pratyakshatvam, meaning the external objects are perceived, or nitya anumeyatvam, the external objects are only inferred, not perceived. Then Vijnanavadi or Yogachari, that all there is Vijnanam. No such thing as external object. What is the Vijnanam? Kshanika Vijnanam. And there is Madhyamika. He says, when you say there is one kshana followed by the other kshana, what is in between the two kshanas? When you say one moment is distinct other moment, that means that there is some kind of a gap between the two, otherwise there cannot be distinction. So what is there in that gap? Shunya is there. So ultimate truth is Shunya, the Shunyavadi, Madhyamika. So that's what the Tika said. Dushana Vibhaga Jnanaya Bauddhamata Bhedam Vivichya Darshayati. The Bauddhamata Bheda, that there are this kind of Bheda of the opinions whether objects are there, they are inferred, they are momentary, and only Vijnanam or the Shunyam. Vivichya Darshayati. Separately, the teacher shows each one of these ones. So, next verse says, Svakaranyavhasancha Yesham Rupadi Vidyate Yesham Nasitataschanyata Purva Sangati Ruchyate. Svakaranyavabhasam, Swakara Anyavabhasam. That's the first word. So Tika explains Svakarasya Anyena Avabhasa Asya Asti Swakara Anyavabhasam. Svakarasya Avabhasa. The avbhasa, the appearance or the illumination of swakara, of the objects, the akara, the form of the objects are illuminated by anyana, by the consciousness, vijnana. Swakarasya, of an object such as a ghata. Anya, this object is illuminated by jnanayana, by the consciousness. And that's how the avabhasa perception takes place. It is Svaka Anyavasam, Rupadi. Rupadi Bhashyam Vastu. Rupa means color or a form. An external object like a part, which has Rupa or a form or a color, is Anyavasam, is illuminated by something other than the part. What is Anyam? Is Anyam Jnanam. This part is illuminated by the consciousness. And that's how the part becomes pratyaksha or object of perception. So they accept the existence of part and that the jnanam, the consciousness illumines the part, and that's how the perception of part takes place. This is simple, Vaibhashika. Yesham Bauddhana Mate Vidyate. Rupadi Vidyate Yesham Vidyate. Meaning Yesham Mate Vidyate. Yesham Bauddhana Mate Vidyate. Those Bauddhas, Vaibhashikas, in whose opinion this is what it is. So they accept. The thing is that you have to explain the Vyavahara. You have to explain the life, regardless of what the theory is. You can't say there is no world, there is no life. What you experience is what you experience. And that is what creates all these problems in the mind anyway, the way we experience. The thing is that what we experience is what we experience. But our interpretation of what we experience is the problem. So they are giving us the interpretation of what we are experiencing. This is one. The next line, Yesham Nasti. So Tikakara says, Yesham Jnanamatrastin Asvivadinam. Then we should also not mention here that there are the other people also who are the Sautrantikas, who say that the objects is in fact inferred. Therefore, they say there is anumanam. So Pratyakshavadi and Nitya Anumeyatvam. Pratyakshatvam and Anumeyatvam, both are included here. So these are two fellows, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. Then there is Vijnanavadi, which is called Yogachara. Yesham cha Jnanamatra Astvivadinam. Is this school of thought which do not accept existence of external world or external object, or subjectivists. Only subject is there. Vijnanam is there. So Vijnanam, the momentary consciousness, keeps on assuming all its forms, and what you see is only Vijnanam, no external world, no external object. Yesham cha Jnanamatra Astitavadyanam mate Tata avasat jnana anilbhashyam rupadi nasti. In the opinion of those, Jnanamatra Astitavadyanam, those who accept Astitva, the presence of Jnanamatram, only consciousness. Tataha anyad bhashyam rupadi nasti. Tata, other than Vijnanam, there is no rupadi, there is no object such as form, color, etc. like a pot. Avasat jnanat anyad bhashyam rupadi nasti. Other than that consciousness, there is no object. The consciousness alone shines as object. So svakaranya bhasam cha yesham rupadi vidyate yesham nasi tatascha anyat. So then purvadagata chakarat yesham vade vijnana vinasti. The Madhyamikas say that even Vijnanam also is not there. What is this Shunyam? So three opinions are stated, the fourth also we should understand here, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Yogachara, Madhyamika. So this is the presentation of the different schools of Buddhism. In the fourth Charana, quarter of this verse says, Purva Sangati Uchyate. Purva Asangati Uchyate. We will tell you first, Asangati, incongruence of Purva. Of first one, what is it? Bhashyat Satvavadasya Asangati. The first one is what? That Bhashyata is there, external objects are there. And that Vijnanam takes the form of that object, that's how the object is perceived. Asangati, incongruence, we will first now explain. Agatamanata, how that is not possible. Uchyate iti pratijanite. So, Purva Asangati Uchyate is a pratigna. Is the proposition here, statement made by the Siddhanti. So, first 3 quarters of that verse 24 present the positions of the Buddhas, and the fourth quarter is the reply of the Siddhanti by a proposition that will show you the incongruence of this to begin with the first one. And you go to the next verse, Tanmatasya asangatim pratipadayati. So the Vaibhashika Mata, Bhashya Pratyakshavadi, incongruence is first shown here. All the matis are shown here anyway. So next one says, in my book, Bhashyatkar, there is no takara there actually. Bhashyakaratvato jnaptehe smritya bhavas sadakshanat kshanikatva cha samskaram naiva dhatte kvachit tudhi. Bhashyakaratvatah jnaptehe. So jnaptehe bhashyakaratvatah. The first opinion is that objects are there. Jnapti or consciousness takes the form of that object such as a part, and that's how the perception of part takes place. So Tika says jnaptehe jnanasyeva bhashyakaratvatah. That jnapti or jnanam or consciousness or kshanika vijnanam, momentary consciousness, bhashyakaratva, that alone assumes the bhashyakara, the form of the external object. Bhashyakaratva akaratva prasangat. The bhashya vastu akaratva prasangat. Because this is jnapti of the consciousness that takes the form of the external object. So this is what you say. How does perception take place? That here is a part which is momentary. Then there is consciousness momentary. That consciousness takes the form of the part, momentary, and that's how the perception of part, momentary, takes place. Now, bhashya vastu akaratva prasangat. Is it possible that the consciousness can take the form of an object as a spot? So how can it do? That cannot happen. Bhashya vastu akaratva prasangat. Then bhashya vastu akara, the akara form, the external object, has to be taken by the consciousness. But how can it do? How can there be contact? Consciousness can take the form of the part, provided consciousness and part are together. That part is there, then the consciousness takes the form, that's how the consciousness will appear of the form of the part. Jnayasya utpattehe pak tavat jnana sambandha. But this part also is momentary, understand? Everything is momentary. So, Jnayasya utpattehe prak. Jnaya means object of knowledge as a part. Utpattehe, before its utpatti. Because momentary, every moment it arises, before the part has arisen, before that, jnana sambandha nasti. Jnanam, the consciousness, cannot contact the part which is not yet emerged. Because this moment, previous moment, the part was not there, therefore, in the moment part was not, the consciousness naturally cannot assume the form of that part. There cannot be contact between the two. But what about after part is created? Utpannasya swarasamanguratvat karmakarataya jnanat prag avasthana abhavat. Utpannasya swarasamangutvat. Now the part which has moment arisen now, so it is perishable, destructible by its own nature. Every moment it gets destroyed. Karma karakataya, it is karma or the object of the consciousness. Jnanat pragavasthana abhavat. See, this part, the appearance of part cannot be illumination before before jnanam. So jnana must be there for the pot to be illumined. But jnanam and pot cannot have contact before the creation of pot. And if pot is not created, how can jnanam take that form? So jnana, and therefore the pot does not exist before jnanam. And jnanam cannot contact the pot which has not yet come to existence. See, existence in the pot requires the contact with jnanam. But jnanam cannot contact when the pot has not yet emerged. You follow? Jnanena sambandha aniruddha. So how can you establish sambandha or contact of conscious that is momentary and the part that is momentary? How can there be contact? Because for contact both of them must exist together. But part cannot be unless it is illumined by the consciousness, and therefore there cannot be contact of part and consciousness before part has emerged. And even as part emerges, it is momentarily destructible, and therefore it jnanat pragavasthana bhavat, that momentary part cannot exist before the jnanat prag. Jnana cannot contact the part before creation of part. And pot cannot be before the, when jnana is not there. See, before the pot is created, there cannot be contact with jnana. When jnana is not there, pot cannot be there. So, sambandha, therefore, you cannot establish sambandha. The contact of consciousness with pot, which is momentary, dying every moment, with that part, you cannot establish the contact of consciousness. And therefore, how can there be pratyaksha? So, pratyaksha vedanta then accept, but you can't. Pratyaksha is not possible if this object is momentary. And the consciousness is also momentary. These two momentary things you cannot establish contact between them, because one depends upon the other. The part depends upon consciousness for it to be, and then consciousness is not yet there, part is not there, consciousness cannot contact. When it cannot contact, part cannot be there. So how can there be a contact? How can there be pratyaksha? The nityanumeyatva kalpana, when pratyaksha is not there, anumanam cannot be there. Second school is nityanumeyatvam. That Sautrantika says that there is no pratyaksha, objects are there. First one says objects are there, you perceive them. Second one says objects are there, there is no perception, but it is by inference that you know that objects are there. Inference cannot be if the perception is not. Nityanumeyatva kalpan anupattescha. So pratyaksha anubhava virodhat, pratyaksha anubhava cannot be there, anumeyatva also cannot be there. Then third is what? Vijnanavai parisheshat jnanasya akaro vishayati. So therefore each one dismisses the other fellow, by the way. And therefore the Vijnanavadi which says there is no external object, all there is Vijnanam, has already dismissed these two fellows. Parisheshat, so what remains after as a process of elimination? Jnanasya akaro vishayati. Vijnana matra astitvadi mata pravesha iti bhava. So now we come to this Vijnana matra astitva. All that is Vijnanam, momentary consciousness. No external things. There are no perception, no inference, no external objects. All there is Vijnanam, consciousness. That alone appears. Without the objects, it appears as it does. So you somehow explain our life anyway. Even though you declare there is no external world, the fact remains that people do experience or they feel there is an external. So you have to explain it some way. Kincha, Tika says, Anubhavituhu api te madekshnikatvat. Now we come to the subject also. So far we focused attention on the consciousness and the object. Now there is no object, all there is consciousness. So then there is subject. So who experiences the kshanikatvam, or so then anubhavito api te mate kshanikatvat. In the opinion of the kshanika vijnani, the subject also is momentary. The consciousness which appears as the universe is momentary. To whom this appears subject also is momentary. Anyasya anubhote anyasya smriti adarsanat. We say, how can there be smriti? Now, how can, even though they accept the kshanikatvam of the subject, they somehow accept that, how do you explain memory? That there is memory in the life, that I remember this spot, remember the person, remember things. How can remembrance be there? Remembrance is there because of samskara. Every moment experience leaves the samskara. Where? On that momentary consciousness. That samskara is passed on to the second moment somehow. You follow? So our point is, how can the second moment, which is independent, remember something that was experienced the first moment, which is different? The two moments are distinct from each other. No connection between them. So it is the first momentary consciousness that experience something and you say that samskaras are there. How can this second moment, the Atma, which is independent, how can it remember what is not experienced by that and remember something experienced by the other one? Anya anubhute anyasya smriti adarsanat. So anubhavito, because the subject also is momentary, even when a new subject is arising there, how can a new fellow remember what was experienced by the previous one? So, Vishaya Sudebhavasya Prasajyeta. Therefore, in that mata, the consequence will be you cannot explain smriti or memory. So the line says Smriti Abhava Sadakshanat. So with Vijnanavadi you cannot explain smritis. So Kshanat means Kshanikatvat Sada Smriti Abhava Prasajyeta. That's the refutation of the Kshanika Vijnani. That Kshanat means Kshanikatvat. Kshanikatvat, momentariness of the very subject also. Smriti Abhava Prasajyeta. There will be now the consequence that there will be abhava or absence of smriti because next moment cannot remember what was experienced of the Atma in the first moment. No, but the samskara is there. That in this moment the Atma experiences something, even though that Atma is not there next moment, that is samskara of this experience, and therefore that samskara becomes the reason for the remembrance of the next Atma. Shruti hetu samskara vita durlabha. How do you explain samskara? What is smriti? Smriti hetu means what is the cause of smriti? Samskara. Shruti hetu samskara te durlabha, you for te for you, or for this fellow, you. This samskara is also durlabha. You cannot explain even samskara. If samskara is there, then smriti can be there. Even if samskara is there, we say that the new one cannot remember what was explained. But then suppose you say samskara is there. The previous experiencer, previous momentary experiencer, leaves samskara in the buddhi, which becomes the cause of the smriti for the next momentary experiencer. But samskara opi durlabha. How do you get samskara in the first place? The next line is Kshanikatvacha samskaram naiva adhatte kvachit tudhi. Kshanikatvariti dihi kvachidapi samskaram naiva adhatte na nikshipati. Sarvasya kshanikatvad. Buddhi also is kshanika. So in buddhi, the samskara can be in the buddhi or atma, either of them. But because it's kshanika, therefore When you then experience takes place, by then the buddhi, everything is changing, and therefore how can the samskara be there? In buddhi also, how can there be samskara when buddhi also is every moment changing? So, the kvachidapi samskara naiva adatte na nikshipari. Buddhi also cannot receive the samskara. Sarvasya kshanikatvat. Because the subject also is kshanika, consciousness kshanika, buddhi also is kshanika, so samskara also is kshanika. Therefore, how do samskara take place? Because that samskara also is kshanika. How can there be samskara next moment? You say that one kshana passes on samskara, second kshana. How is it possible when they are not together? To pass on something, the two fellows exist together, Then you can give the baton, But that fellow, this fellow is there, that is not there. That is there, this fellow is not there. How can the samskara also be passed on? So in the buddhi, the samskara cannot be. Cha shabdat na swatmanepi. In atma also be this momentary. That all samskaras cannot be. Swasyapi kshanikatvat. Because of kshanikatvam, the samskara also cannot take place. Samskaras are not there, smriti cannot be there. And we have smriti. So this theory cannot explain smriti because of the momentariness. Kvachittu. At no time can the buddhi receive the samskara. Iti uktam sphutayati, next one says. Because smriti has to have a locus. Buddhi can be a locus, or Atma can be a locus for memory, for samskara. So, that the next one says, Adarasya sattvacha tulyata nirnimittatah sthaneva kshanikattvasya haram sya natadishyate. Adharasyapi asatvat. So Tika explains what is adhara. Yatra samskara adhatavya, where the samskara has to be planted. Atma antahkaraneva, either in Atma the samskaras are there, you may say, or antahkaran samskaras are there. That is where samskaras have to be planted. Tasyapi adharasya samskar. Now, that adhara also is kshanika. So imagine that an experience has taken place. And the samskara is to be now planted on Atma. But then that time that Atma is not, that kshana is not there when the experience takes place. And next kshana comes that time, therefore there will be no samskara because that also is gone. Your experience is there, suppose that samskara is also momentary, and that samskara, locus, buddhi or atma also are momentary. Therefore, adharasya samskara adhanakale asatvat, when samskara is there, this atma is not there. Therefore, smriti abhava. So because atma is changing, buddhi is constantly changing. Therefore, that you require, samskara is there, you require one moment for the samskara to be planted. But that time, that antahkarana is not there, when the samskara is there. And therefore, where will samskara be planted? And therefore, samskara, there asatvat, so that adhara, namely atma or buddhi, is not present at the time of samskara, and therefore, there is no way where samskara can be planted. So, smriti abhava iti anvaya. So, this is what was the naivadatte kvachit buddhi, that buddhi cannot receive any samskara is explained here in this first quarter. Then you say that, how come we have this notion of continuity? Because sadhusya. So sadrushyam or similarity or extreme similarity between the two moments becomes the reason that you cannot distinguish how the next moment is different. Therefore, the continuity is a notion because of extreme similarity in every moment, like the flame. All right. So let us address that. So then, this verse says, Tulyata nirnimittataha. How can there be tulyata between one and the other? For some nimitta must be there. For one momentary flame to be different, similar to the next momentary flame, some cause, the reason must be there. Why should the next moment, understand this, why should the next moment is independent of the first moment? Why should it be similar to the first moment? You say sadrushyam, extreme similarity. What is the reason for the similarity of the next moment, the first moment, when next moment is fresh, new, independent? So why should the next moment be similar to first moment? What's the nimitta? You don't find any reason why the similarity should be there. That's what the teacher says. Yaduktam sadrusya nibandhano brahma ireva pratyabhijnanam itaddusayati. We are asking pratyabhijnana, recognition cannot be there unless you recognize that object, unless it is memory and perception. He says, it is not the same object you are perceiving, a similar object you are perceiving. You don't realize a similar object, you think it's the same object. Why? Because of the similarity. So, tulyata nirnimittataha. So, itah arabhya kriyamanandushanam kshanavijnana. All this from now on what is stated also applies to kshanika vijnana also. Because that is the problem of this tulyata or sadrusya. Tulyata nirnimittataha, that's what the verse says. Iti ekam padam. So what is samasa? Tulyatayaha. Nirnimittatva tulyatayaha nirnimittatvatah. There is no nimitta or reason for tulyata or sadrusya or similarity. So tulyataha, what is purva parakshanayo sadrutvasya? Tulyata means the purva aparakshanayo, the purvakshana, aparakshana. Preceding moment, next moment, sadrusyam, similarity. That following moment is extremely similar to the previous moment. Nimitta, why should that be so? Nimitta bhavad. Why should the next moment be extremely similar to the previous moment? So it says here, Gunaihi avayevapi samanyam sadrusya vyavahara nimittam. You say that one thing is similar to the other. You know, for example, this one grape is similar to another grape. Sadrusya is there. That sadrusya similarity requires what? Gunaihi. That this is one color, this is the same color, so guna are similar. Avayavahi, it is avayava, it is one form, another form, so they are also similar. Therefore, the sadrusya similarity can be between two entities that possess guna and avayava. One book is similar to the book because this possesses a guna, bookness, and avayava, it is made up of so many pages, etc., which is similar to the other one. Then similarity can be between two entities which possess guna and avayava. Then you say, hey, it's the same thing. Oh, same sari, same clothes, same face, same thing. So that you see guna, avayava, same height, etc. Then only sadrusya can be, So we get confused between twins, the identical twins. Particularly when they are growing up. When they grow up sufficiently, then the distinctions do arise. But up to a time, there is hardly any distinction. Even mother, sometimes they are confused. And so this fellow is laughing, one child is laughing and one child is... Because every time mother, she gave bath to this fellow again, And that's why he's crying. That fellow is laughing because he's saved from bath. This fellow is crying because mother fed this fellow twice, and this fellow wasn't fed. Things like that. So even mother sometimes cannot recognize but similarity requires a form and other qualities. Not only form, but both are girls, etc., or that the fairness, etc. Otherwise, if one is dark and one is fair, there's no problem. Sadrusya Vyavahara. So this is the nimitta. That's it what causes our idea of sadrusya, similarity. The two entities are similar is reason the cause because their qualities are similar, their forms are similar. Tad vijnananam, but according to you, vijnanam is it is nirvishesha. No vishesha of one moment from the other moment. It doesn't have form, it is nirvayavam, it is formless, it has no qualities. So the criteria required for determining similarity between two entities, that one entity called the flame is similar to the next entity, or one moment is similar to the next moment, and therefore there is an appearance of continuity. Even though consciousness or Atma is momentary, we have the notion that Atma, I am continuous, is because I am not able to distinguish between a constant flow of similar moments and the same consciousness. But then, on what basis do you say that the following momentary consciousness is similar to previous momentary consciousness, when consciousness doesn't have either qualities or shape or form? Then why should next moment arise similar to previous? What's the reason? When next moment is an independent moment, why should it be similar to the previous moment? Because there is no reason for them to be similar. They don't possess the criteria for similarity. So it's an assumption that there is extreme similarity. Therefore, it gives notion of they don't dismiss continuity somehow. So continuity is explained by saying that there is similarity. What makes it similar? Why should the next fellow be similar? He's independent. And then why should it be similar? And how do you distinguish similarity? For establishing similarity, they don't possess any criteria that this is similar. Why not the same? Why do you say this is similar and not the same? Similarities and sameness are different. Then you know that this is similar because one grape has a form similar, color similar, taste similar, smell similar. But when those features which can distinguish between them and make them similar in your understanding, when those criteria are not there, what makes you think that next moment is not the same? Why do you say it is similar, not the same? And so nirgunatvat, niravayavatvat, because the consciousness is nirgunam, niravayavam, therefore similarity cannot, there is no nimitta, no criterion for establishing similarity. Then तथा पूर्वोत्तरक्षणयोः दृष्टुः एकस्य असत्वाच्च न सादृश्यत्व सिद्धिः. Now next thing is, now you pay attention here. Next one is that, now don't keep on looking like that, when I'm talking. Otherwise you miss one sentence or one word, then you won't follow. So in order for you to, there must be somebody to say that these two entities are similar. First of all, for these two entities to be similar, they must possess guna and avayava. And secondly, there must be an entity. He says that this grape is similar to the grape, or previous moment is similar to the next moment. Somebody to say that. But the fellow who says also is momentary. So, tatha purvottarakshaнаyo drashtuhu ekasya asatvacha. Drashtuhu of the drashta. Purvottarakshaнаyo in the moment, purva earlier and next moment. Asatvacha, the momentary subject, the subject that existed previous moment is no more than next moment. Now who is there to say that this one is similar to another? Na sadrusha siddhihi. So similarity between two entities can be established when two criteria are satisfied. One is, one entity is similar to other provided each one possesses guna and avayava, then only similarity can be there. Secondly, there must be someone to establish that hey, this one is similar to other. Now, number one, that momentary consciousness doesn't possess guna, avayava, therefore there is no reason for similarity, no reason to say they are not the same. And secondly, you need somebody to determine the similarity. That fellow is also changing moment. Who will determine the similarity of what was previous and what is next following next moment? Ataha tulyatayaha asiddhehe na tad nibandanam pratyabhijnanam ityartha. Now, pratyabhijnanam is an experience. That we recognize thing is an experience in life, you understand? You can't deny that. Now, Vedantin says that recognition is the proof of continuity. When I recognize that you are the same as the one that I saw yesterday, that shows continuity. When I say that I remember the same one who saw you yesterday is the same one that I am seeing today, I am also seeing continuity in the subject. So recognition is the evidence that Vedantin presents for continuity. Pragaswapsam ahamiti prabodha samaye yah pratyabhijnayate. When this fellow wakes up, he says, I am the same fellow who went to sleep, is the one, is the I who has woken up. Therefore, in sleep there is continuity. So pratyabhijna is a very important argument on the part of Vedantin to establish continuity. Now they are trying to explain, so pratyabhijna is there, recognition is there. They are trying to explain it by saying sadrusha similarity, and that is dismissed here that, number one, there is no reason why next moment should be similar to the first one. Next, there is nothing in the first moment that can distinguish it from the second to say that they are two different moments. And third, there is no one also determine that these two entities are similar. Therefore, tulyataya asiddhehe. The sadrusham, tulyata, similarity cannot be established. So we accept that it is the same, not similar. So therefore, the recognition that it is the same entity and not a similar entity. Na tad nibandanam pratyabhijnanam. Therefore, pratyabhijnanam, recognition, is not tan nibandanam, not sadrusya nibandanam. It is not based on sadrusya or similarity. But then, no, you heard for similarity is this, atha purva parakshana sadrusya drashta sthai kasya dastyate. For escaping this consequence, that there is no sadrusya. Sadrusya is important for them, for kshanikatvam. So for them, no, we said there is somebody who determines sadrusya. Suppose for the sake of an argument you say to escape this consequence, atha purva aparakshana sadrusya drashta sthai kasit astiyate. No, we say that there is a momentary drashta or subject who saw the previous moment flame and who sees the next flame now, and therefore there is a drashta of sadrusya. Moment you accept drashta, means this fellow is present in two moments, the momentariness is gone. Then sthaneva, sthane means what? So sthana means sthaitvam. Sthani sthayitveva, tat kshanikatvahanam na ishyate tvaya. So therefore, kasit astiyate sthai. Sthana means sthayitvam. That for the sake of argument, you say that there is similarity because there is someone to note that similarity in the previous moment and next moment. That means you are accepting a subject which is sthai, which persists for two moments. In that case, the momentariness is gone. So this is how the Vedantin dismisses the idea of the kshanik vijnanam or momentariness of consciousness. Okay, we'll continue. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.